Alan Stein, my man.
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you, brother.
Yeah,
So we share something in common.
we do.
Both love to hoop.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or at least love the game. I don't play much anymore.
Yeah?
But yeah, hoops is, it's been a major staple of my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got your Larry Bird shirt on right now?
Got to represent.
His head is actual size,
I know it
which
is.
is perfect.
Mustache intact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids today don't know how good he was.
Yeah.
I mean, he was.
See, I was
he
a
was an
Magic
assassin.
Johnson fan.
Yeah.
So I think in my mind, my temperament and dislike for him
For sure.
probably made me underestimate him, but I always knew he was a worthy foe.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Magic says that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bird got it done.
Yeah.
But injuries cut it all short. I think he could have been even better.
And that's something that, like, players were really good then, but we didn't know shit about the body like we do now. We didn't
No.
know shit about fueling athletes. We didn't know
No.
shit about like the training, the performance, nor really the mindset principles, which is probably why you had such I guess it's still one of the major separators, because kind of everybody's getting, not everybody, but most people are getting the information about how to care for the body because
Yes.
trainers are getting up to speed and, even the teams working with us here at Onnit and Exos
Absolutely.
and stuff like that. But then the mental side of the game, that is still a big differentiator.
Yeah, and it's the big differentiator in everything we do. I mean,
Right.
that's the one thing. Yeah, that's why sport will cross over and transfer into anything. But can you imagine? I mean, I would have loved to have seen what Bird ate on a regular basis. You think he did any training? Do you think he even bent down to try to touch his toes to pretend to stretch? I bet he just jumped on the court and
Yeah.
started getting loose by shooting. And
Maybe
just
like
kept
one
going.
of those billet hole
Yeah,
stretches,
absolutely.
just like a couple
Yes,
loose ones. And
the
then,
cable guy, Jim Carrey,
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
the suicides real quick. But yeah, I bet that'd probably be it. And,
Yeah.
But yet still played at a high level. So that
It's
part's
super high
remarkable.
level. Yeah, and like what could he have done with more explosive training?
Of course.
And like the faster first step, and then made people respect
Right.
that a little bit more so that his jumper was a little bit cleaner,
Right.
just like, who knows?
But that wasn't around then. So he was still doing the best with what he had at
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
Now, today, if you're not doing it, there's no excuse. It's simply apathy,
Right.
because all of the tools and the knowledge and the training is there. So if you're not doing it, that's on you.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that, like the level of the game itself has just evolved. And people always
Yes.
have these debates like, oh, what if so-and-so was back? I was like, yeah, they were really dominant then.
Yeah.
But you got to understand how big, fast, strong, lean, lanky, like ferocious all athletes in all sports are now.
It's tenfold. It's amazing.
It's just another level.
And I think the stars would cancel each other out. I think if you go back 10, 15, 20, 30 years, those stars would still play today. But I think it's the depth that has increased. The 15th man on the Golden State Warriors today is 20 times better than the 15th man, even on the Showtime Lakers back when you were a kid. Like that, the level has gone up. A lot of that's with the international play. I mean, just the game has grown so much because of those guys, with our age bracket, with Bird and Larry and Jordan, they took the game to a global level and changed everything. But yeah.
And how have you seen, so that's obvious, it's really obvious to see that on the physical side, but how have you seen that translate to the mental side of the game? Because, even when I was growing up, you could talk about being on fire, like being in the zone, but nobody really understood that. Nobody was talking about flow state. Nobody was talking about some of these, neurotransmitter patterns that were coming up that, are associated with being in the zone.
Yes.
Or like actually playing at the top level. No one was actually quantifying anything there. So it's just kind of words.
Absolutely. And now they are. So now folks can train for it. I mean,
Right.
all of the NBA staffs have a mental skills coach or someone that's going to help with that portion of it because they realize it's all of this stuff and it'll be interesting to see what's next. I mean, you guys are on the cutting edge of all that, so you'll probably predict it as much as anyone, but it's pretty phenomenal just to see where it's going.
Yeah. So like there was a study that I read about in which they hooked people up to brain scans and then they would measure them as they were shooting free throws. And as they would make free throws, they would maintain an alpha state, which is kind of that flow state. And when they would miss one, they would get a spike in beta state, beta frequency, which is associated with kind of stress and like kind of being out of the present focus. And I think that's, interestingly, like that's something that you really start to learn through sport.
Absolutely.
Like you learn when you can release, and it's this kind of momentum confidence game. But if you can actually translate that, so when I talk to fighters, like you got to get a fighter, particularly, you can't let them work into the game. You can't
Right.
hope that they make the first shot or land the first punch.
No.
You got to get there.
Not in fighting, you
No,
can't.
you got to get there. You got to get there on the walk.
Yes.
So it's about talking about that. And I'm sure it's kind of the same for you. It's not having your players wait for, oh yeah, I sunk my first 2 threes. Now I'm in the game. You can't wait for that. It's too random.
Be ready, because you're not going to have time to get ready.
Exactly.
So you have to be in that
Especially if
state.
you're coming off the bench too.
Yeah.
You're coming off the bench. You can't wait to make a few shots.
No.
You got to come in there and perform.
I never had seen that study. That's pretty interesting. When I was on talking to Kyle this morning, I told him a story about the first time I had met Kobe Bryant back in 2007. What I didn't tell him was at that Skills Academy, Stephen Curry was actually one of the college counselors, and it was after his freshman year at Davidson, which is before he blew up. No one knew who Stephen Curry was after his freshman year. Not even the coaches at this camp. They all just called him Dell's son because his dad played in the NBA. But I remember there was a few things really remarkable about him. But the most impressive thing was at the end of the first workout, and we were there for 2 workouts a day for 3 days. It was a mini camp with Kobe, and he came over to me just based on proximity, and I had on one of those shirts that said coach on the back. And Steph said, will you rebound for me? Because I don't leave the gym until I swish 5 free throws in a row. Swish 5 free throws in a row. I don't know how many of your listeners play basketball, but swishing 5 free throws in a row is an incredibly high standard.
That's really hard. I had a high standard, I thought, and that was I had to make 3 3-pointers in a row before I would leave the court.
And that
I've
is a
talked
high
about that
standard.
before.
Yeah, but that's an incredibly
that's way
high standard.
easier than 5 swishes.
Yes, and I remember there were a few times where he would swish 4 in a row. He'd hit a little bit of the rim on the 5th one, so it still goes in. He's still 5 for 5. He's mathematically perfect, but that wasn't good enough for him. He'd start over until he'd swish 5. And I don't think it ever took him longer than maybe 12, 15 minutes to swish 5 in a row. But it's funny, when you just brought up that study, that reminded me that, he was conditioning himself to be in that state. He was conditioning himself to do that and to not accept anything less.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the reasons I think he'll go down in history as the best shooter we've ever seen, despite the fact I'm wearing a bird shirt, is his ability just to move on to the next shot. It doesn't happen often. He could miss 20 shots in a row. He'll still beg for the ball when there's 2 seconds left and the game's tied, because he always believes that the next shot's going in. And that's a hard mindset to get to.
That's, and that's something that you see even in the greatest of great players sometimes is deficient. I think LeBron James, obviously is one of the greatest basketball players of all times, but I think
no question.
That's something that I think not just me, but a lot of people have kind of noticed, especially earlier in his career. There'd be times where he'd be like, yeah, maybe I don't want to take this final shot.
Yes.
And that's not something you see in Steph.
No.
Now, it doesn't mean Steph's better.
Right.
LeBron obviously has other characteristics that are, excelling and phenomenal, but it is a very unique thing, even amongst the elite of the elite.
Yes.
To have that oh yeah, the best chances for the team are when I have the ball.
Yes.
It's that unflappable confidence, even if you've gone 1 for 10 that night.
And that only comes from preparation.
Yeah.
Demonstrated performance. That's what it comes from. When you know that you've swished 5 free throws in a row every day of your life since you were 10 years old, you're pretty cool going to the line. You're going to be fine, especially if you've done some of the other, mental practices and stuff you talk about living in the present moment. That's what it comes down to. But that's where I think the game is evolving to the point where now it's the cerebral's every bit as important as the physical. The physical is just not going to be good enough anymore.
What are some of the things you do to help people get into the present moment? Because as I was saying, you could wait till you make a couple shots and then you can kind of really be in the flow, or wait till you get in rhythm in the ring and then you're in the flow. But how do you get there prior to any activity?
Well, there's 3 steps that I talk to folks all the time. The first is the one I just mentioned, which is you just focus on the next play. Mm-hmm. You can't do anything about the one that just happened. Whether you made a 3-pointer or you dribbled it off your foot, it's over now and you have to move on to the next play. And especially in a game like basketball, you miss a wide open layup and you're in your feelings and you're pouting and you're trotting back with bad body language. Your man just scored an easy layup on the other end because you chose not to be present for just a few seconds.
Yeah.
Can't afford that. The other is to put all of your focus on the only 2 things you have control over, which is your effort and your attitude. Live in your effort and your attitude. Effort I always find incredibly fascinating because people admit and acknowledge that giving a good effort is a choice. You choose to work hard, but that means by default, you also choose not to work hard. There has to be another side to that coin. But you ask any normal human being, if you call them out and hold them accountable on why they didn't give a good effort, they make excuses.
Yeah.
I was tired. I was this, I was that. you still had the choice whether or not to give your best effort. And these guys condition themselves to give their best effort. I mean, no one does it 100% of the time. You wouldn't be human, but I mean, they're almost infallible with that. And then same thing with attitude. Attitude, in my opinion, is all about feedback. You know, I try to look at, I mean, life's the most important thing we have, so I don't want to trivialize it, but really life is nothing but just a series of at-bats. Like this podcast right now is just another at-bat. You had lunch before, that's just an at-bat, and everything gives us feedback, you know, internally and externally, and we get feedback. And what we choose to do with that feedback determines how successful we'll be. So no matter what type of feedback you get, you can use it in a way that serves you and moves you forward. So when Steph misses a shot, he's able to quickly analyze why he missed that shot, and he'll make sure that he'll make a correction. I mean, it's a little easier on a free throw when you're going to replicate two shots, but you don't see Steph Curry miss short on a free throw. He sure as hell ain't missing again short.
Right.
He makes an adjustment because he uses and processes that feedback. And then the third pillar is just focusing on the process. You know, don't worry about the wall. Focus on laying each brick as perfectly as you can. And if you lay each brick perfectly, the wall's probably going to take care of itself. And if you can do those three things consistently, I think you're more apt to be in the present moment.
Yeah, I think all that makes sense. And so let's go back to each one of these. So I think there's lessons and things to expand on all of them. You know, the first one is, I think one of the problems is that coaches and the world reinforces the fear of doing your best and still failing, and them judging you. Like, you could be giving an all-out effort, diving on the floor, bleeding, but you know, with my high school coach, you miss a shot that you normally would make, which is statistically going to happen. You get pulled out of the game.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it doesn't matter that anything else other than the statistical probability that every once in a while you're going to miss a layup. And then, but when the penalty for that accident is severe and you get embarrassingly pulled out of the game and ridiculed, well, it's going to pattern even more fear. And that fear is going to pull you out of the present moment even more. And it's funny that people are just kind of now waking up to this a little bit. Like, I remember, I've told this story in my course, Go For Your Win, but it was a really impressive moment where Pete Carroll was squaring off against Mike McCarthy. So Seahawks, Green Bay Packers. And it was the playoffs, I think, leading up to the Super Bowl. And Russell Wilson was just having a dog of a game, like really rough game, 3 interceptions, something like that. Every time he would throw an interception, Pete Carroll would be there and like clap him, smack him on, like, come on, man, we got this. I believe in you. And just believed in him the whole way. Packers were way out ahead. And then the Seahawks started to make a run. And as they started to make a run, you saw on the other side, Mike McCarthy getting more aggressive and more angry and more like fired up, you know, in the wrong way, and instilling his team with fear, whereas Pete Carroll was just enthusiasm kind of the whole way. And it ended up, you know, with a kind of like this turning point moment was they needed an onside kick because they were that far behind. Kicker kicks the ball. Their sure-handed tight end, this guy Bostic, fumbles the ball. Clearly, he's not trying to do that.
Right.
And then, so the Seahawks get the ball back. Well, they still got to go whatever 50 yards and they got to score a touchdown.
Yeah.
So instead of like firing up his defense, he goes there and he just starts lighting up that guy Bostic, like his face, like talking shit, like, how could you? What the fuck's wrong with you? Blah blah blah. Like he meant to do that.
Right. Of course.
You know, like, and like that's gonna help him the next time.
I know.
You know, and like his defense didn't need the same pep talk. Like, hey, here we go. They got the ball.
Yeah.
No fucking problem. We've stopped teams better than this before 1,000,000 times. And you're going to go out there and you're going to fucking stop them this time.
Absolutely.
Right. And so like that whole framework thing was, you know, just he was having an off moment, or that's just part of his old school mentality. And what happens, of course? Well, Seahawks fucking march right through that defense like a knife through hot butter.
Yep.
And score.
Absolutely.
And game over. Season's over. You know, and I really feel like that was like a key thing where that coach mentality was able to change the outcome of the game. And the thing is, all right, most of us don't have actual coaches now, but we're all our own internal coach. So we can have our own positive internal coach, and we fuck something up in a relationship, in work, and whatever.
Absolutely.
We can either be Pete Carroll or Mike McCarthy. We can either tell ourselves how horrible we are, or get ourselves fired up.
Learn the lesson and move on. Yeah. But I mean, that's the crazy part. But I mean, what you just said is what our whole society does, which is value outcomes instead of the process. Yep. I mean, you know, as a basketball player, it's either a good shot or a bad shot the moment it's taken. It has nothing to do with whether it goes in.
Yeah.
It has to do with time and score and the player taking it and their range and all of that stuff, because you can clearly miss a great shot to take. That was the best shot our team could have gotten and we missed it. Or you can throw in and make an awful shot and yet we still reward that. I mean, I have young kids, so they're playing basketball now, and it's the parents do what all parents do. They clap when the kids make a shot. They don't clap when they don't. So we're reinforcing the outcome, which is the wrong thing to do to little kids. So now they're thinking, well, I only get praise when I make the shot. And that's not what should be going through their mind. It's a good or a bad shot the moment it's taken. It has nothing to do with whether it goes in. Now, statistically, you'll make a higher percentage of good shots, which is why we want you to take them. But that's a problem. I mean, I think Pete Carroll, any coach that goes over and pats their player on the back after they made a mistake, as long as it's not from apathy or lack of effort,
right,
which it wasn't.
Right.
Like you just said so perfectly.
Because that's the thing that you're able to control.
He didn't try to fumble the ball.
No, fuck no.
No.
What does he want to do? Be embarrassed in front of everybody?
Letting his teammates down? Everything.
No. He was trying his best.
Absolutely.
So fucking give that guy a hug.
Yes.
Like don't beat him up.
And tell the defense, look, our teammate, our brother just made a mistake that we know he feels awful about. We've got his back. We're going to make sure that doesn't define our season. We've got his back. We're going to get a stop because we know how much this meant to him.
Yeah.
That would have been, And again, he's an NFL head coach. So, he
obviously done a lot of great things.
He has. And
won a lot of Super Bowls, whatever. I'm not trying to talk shit on him, but this was an observation of a moment. And we all have moments.
But it happens a lot.
Yeah. And we all do it to ourselves just ruthlessly.
Of course.
It was interesting. So one of my biggest sports moments in basketball was I got called up. We had a top 25 nationally ranked high school team. It had Chris Mim, who was a center who played in the NBA for a while. Had this guy, Luke Axel, played for Texas and Kansas. And so two like big time marquee players. Mim was like a 7-foot center even in high school. So I got called up from the JV. And this was right after a big ankle injury too. Oh. So I got an ankle injury right at the start of the season, came back, played a tournament, just shredded whoever I was playing on the JV side. And then the coach called me up because they needed some outside shooting to kind of keep the pressure off these collapsing 2-3 zones on our big 7-footer. So calls me up, and really the coach, he was super old school. And basically he was like, I'm going to call you up. You're going to shoot a 3. If you make it, you can get to stay on varsity. You miss it, you don't. I was like, all right, sweet.
Glad you didn't add any external pressure to you.
Exactly. Like I'm not worried about being a Californian moving to Texas. And this is my first time on a big Texas high school sports venue where we get hundreds, sometimes thousands of people watching our fucking basketball games. And it's in the papers and it's announced on the fucking PA system at the school.
And he put pressure on top of pressure for you.
Right.
That was a thoughtful gift.
But anyway, so, I remember that moment where he called my name and I knew it was coming and that walkout, just the heartbeat. And I knew then I'd played enough basketball. Like the first thing I have to do is make physical contact with somebody.
Yes.
Like, cause I got so much
you got the jitters, man. Absolutely.
Jitters. So like bump somebody pretty hard, either on a screen or just as they're moving through to set a screen, make some physical contact, not enough to draw a foul or anything, but enough to like, okay. So did that, and the ball goes, and again, collapsing 2-3 zone. There's always that spot on the wing.
Yep.
So I just set myself up there. Point guard drives, the defense kind of collapses to him, kicks it to me. I shoot the shot, and it was like the most slow motion thing that I've ever seen, and it goes in. And then just to feel my audience go crazy. I've never had a fan base like that. Even JV games is like 7 people for a JV game and like 700 for a varsity game.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. Then I got so excited, right? Yeah. So the ball goes down the next time and I get it in the corner and I just wing like an air ball that goes like 5 feet.
Just way too excited.
Too far because I was just so fucking fired up.
Absolutely.
I got pulled out of the game after that. Got it back in again because at least I made my first one and then was able to sink another shot. So went another 3. So went 2 for 3 that night and that started the season. But it was really interesting watching how, my life changed based on something that wasn't really in my control. And when I look back on that, sure, I'd shot a lot of 3s. I didn't leave the court until I made 3 threes. And all of that contributed. All of that was there. But it was also just kind of like one of these moments where you feel like in that time, I had like help or something. Like I was just like in flow or in the grace of the universe. Like that was part of my path was to play on that team.
For sure.
For whatever reason. And even looking back, I don't say like I made that shot. It's just weird how I look at that now. It's like, oh yeah, that shot was made.
Yeah.
And that shot was made because it was supposed to be made.
And then
in
remarkable
a really
how quickly
weird
it can change
way,
too.
Yeah.
Because then you said a mere few
Oh, yeah.
seconds later,
Few
you
seconds
landing
later.
in the third row of the bleachers.
Oh.
And yeah, so think about that. Like that's remarkable.
Yeah.
But as coaches, I mean, the job should have been to make that process as easy for you, to eliminate as many
Sure.
distractions, not add sugar on top of sugar and say, you make this or else. I mean, that's the last thing that you'd want to tell, especially somebody young, you know, they don't know.
Yep.
But that's, you know, and for me, that's what I find so fascinating about all this is, you know, I speak to businesses now and I teach them how to take all of this stuff that you and I have such a love for through the game of basketball and apply these same principles. Because anything we're talking about now with hoops, you can, as you said, you can apply to relationships, you can apply to business, you can apply to, it's all the same type of stuff.
Yeah, you can have that same fear mentality as a boss. So
Absolutely.
if someone makes a mistake and misses something, you know, you're going to fire them or you're going to like berate them publicly or whatever when they're trying their best, working hard,
Exactly.
you know, doing the things. Yeah, all right. If they're careless or lazy or whatever, then, you know, get on their butt a little bit.
Of course.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But we do the same thing. We have this result focus. Oh, well, that campaign didn't work or this thing. And then people are playing out of fear. Then they hate what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, that coach that I was talking about didn't, no matter how good our teams were, we never won a playoff game. He never won a playoff game the whole time he was there.
Interesting.
The reason why is because he was so ruthless on the players that, and people hated playing.
Yep.
And it was a mix because we loved the game and we loved our school and we loved our teammates. But we hated practicing so much. We hated that there was this appeal to the season ending for one, because like, oh, we lose this game.
It's a pressure release.
Whew, we don't have to deal with this
guy ain't gonna be
fucking
yelling at me no more.
maniac anymore, right?
How sad is that?
And two, by leading up his own pressure that he put on himself, because it's really just a mirror of the way that they treat themselves. You know, when Mike McCarthy fucks up, he treats himself just the same way he treats Bostic. And when my coach fucked up, I'm sure he treated himself the same way as he treated our team, you know, came from a military background and whatever.
But that's not healthy either.
That's not healthy,
like, you got to show yourself some grace and some compassion.
Exactly. So what would he do leading up to the game? Well, we would have double practices and like double work and then like double fucking suicides leading up. So our legs were just shot before all our big games. So I was like, thanks, coach. Like I can't even jump today. You know, like this is great. I'm glad we stayed up till midnight running sprints.
Exactly.
For what reason again? I don't know. You know, and so it built this kind of negative feedback loop, which was really unfortunate. And I think one of the secrets to Onnit's success and my success here is that I realized that to do anything well, you got to keep the love in there.
Yes.
You got to keep the love. So if you're a parent coaching somebody, if you're a boss leading a company, like you got to keep the love alive.
Yes.
Like that's a priority.
Absolutely. And I can tell that from the moment I walked in here yesterday because it's palpable, the culture that you've created here, because now you've created something where you attract, like attracts like. So you've attracted people here that want to do things that way, that have an equal affinity and a love for the things that you're passionate about. And that's the thing I think businesses need to learn. You know, figure out your identity. Who are you and what is it you're trying to do? Let's collectively create some standards that if we all live up to these standards, we'll live this out. Let's have enough compassion and care for each other that we hold each other accountable for these things, and that will be our culture. And then when you have a great culture, you attract the type of people that want to be here. And the people that aren't a good fit, they're not going to last very long here. If one of them slips through the cracks, they're not going to last very long because they don't want to be around people that are in the Onnit culture, people that are growing mentally and physically and emotionally, people that are all about pushing themselves and pushing limits. People are about serving others. You know, if you're a negative Nancy, you don't want to be around people doing that. So you'll just leave.
Yeah. I mean, a parasite can't thrive in an optimized immune system host.
No,
you know,
absolutely.
Like it wants to go to a weakened, diseased, and that's where it's going to flourish, right?
Yeah.
And someone with a parasitic mentality is going to want to find something that also is the right host for their mentality. Whereas the opposite is true. You know, if you have a healthy organism and all healthy tissue, then it's going to support that and actually defend itself naturally against those other inputs. And we've seen that. You know, we've seen our organism expel splinters before anybody had to fire them. You know, people are just like, I'm out of here. You know, like I appreciate what you guys are doing, but it's not for me because I want to complain about my job and be a victim and go home and drink a lot. And that's not, that's not really conducive.
Doesn't fit here.
Here.
And the higher your level of care and the higher level of trust you've built, then you can hold people to an even higher level of accountability. It's all proportionate to the depth of the trust and respect you've built. So again, like with your coach as an example, he doesn't form that bond. You don't know that he truly cares about you as a human being off the court as much as he does. Like, I'll care about you if you make this three. If you don't, maybe not so much. Then he's not able to hold you guys to the standards and the level of accountability that's required to win a playoff game or to win a state championship. So, that's why the best coaches, I mean, yes, they get on their players and they're incredibly demanding. The best bosses do the same thing. You love working for them, but they're really hard to please. But they've also created that relationship where they care about you and they want what's best for you as well, not just for the team. So then it's that relationship, and some people are just missing that. They're so skewed on the other end of the seesaw that it can't go up on the other side.
Yeah, I think people power is it's a poor substitute for love. Mm-hmm. Like love actually can compel right action. But power is like the cancer-causing artificial sweetener version.
Yeah.
Of how you make the cookie, right? Yep. Like it can have some of the same effects because it can get people to do stuff. And of course, power, using fear and power. And, the coach had artificial power. He had the power to whether to play us or not to play us, whether to leave us on the team or not leave us on the team, or all of this natural power based on his position, power that he didn't earn. He was given, granted power. Yeah. And then he just used that with fear as the motivator. But, you see someone like Pete Carroll, all right, yeah, he was granted that job by the team owners and whatever. But he's also inculcating the love for him and the love for and even you see there's sons of other coaches that don't even have that kind of enthusiasm that Pete does, but you can tell that the players genuinely love and Phil Jackson, for example, right? Like there was a true love, even though he wasn't that same kind of encouraging guy, but there was just this level of respect and a mutual kind of love that you felt, or Pat Riley or some of these other people that were a little harder and, a little less, but the players still played out of love.
Absolutely.
And there was power there too, but really there's nothing that's going to motivate you or motivate anybody more than love. That is the force that drives the greatest action. And love does not contain fear. No. Right? So to really maximize the amount of love, you got to really eliminate as much fear unnecessarily as you can.
Create a safe environment, and that's what you need. And that's the difference between having authority and actually being a leader. If you're leading with love, then that, again, the like attracts like. You're going to get people that will run through a brick wall for you. Because it should have been the inverse. It should have been you wanted to make that shot so bad because you didn't want to let your coach down because he means that much to you.
Yeah, because he gave me a chance. Yes. And he was really caring for me. And he was, how is it, being a California guy in Texas, moving in? No, it's a lot. But, know that you're going to get your chance. You're going to get multiple chances. We're going to work with you and make sure. Yep. And if you're ready for this level, you're going to be here. Well, that would have been a totally different experience.
Absolutely. And I learned it as a young performance coach, but then I've translated that to business now, which is the golden rule of you connect first, you coach second. Has to be in that order. Mm-hmm. You can't, X's and O's mean nothing if we've not created any type of bond or connection. There's no trust. You don't know that I care about you. You don't know that I've got your back. I mean, ultimately that's the most important stuff. So, and that would have been his best move. The day you moved to Texas would not have been, let me see if this kid can make a three or have any footwork. Let me hear a little bit about your journey. What brought you to Texas? Let me bring you in and develop a relationship with you first. And then you'll develop that love where he can get hard. He can be hard on you and he can hold you accountable and you'll be fine with that. But coaches skip that connection part. And the connections and same with bosses. I mean, connect first, coach second. It has to be in that order.
And then, to transition to one of the other things you're saying is remove the outcome dependent happiness, sadness, praise, punishment, right? That was one thing that, one of my best friends and actually one of the first person to put any money into Onnit, I raised $100,000 to start Onnit. And then I got 60 of that from Bodie Miller.
Yep.
And so he was an Olympic skier and national champion. And one of the really unique things is he completely discarded the external validation of whether he won or not. He just literally only cared about how he skied.
Yeah.
And if he skied the line that he wanted to ski, and whether he was doing what he needed to do, whether he trained the way he needed to train, whether he, sent it the way he wanted to send it. And he had his own kind of rules around what that meant, and he knew what what would affect his performance and what wouldn't. It wouldn't matter what people said. People were like, don't have any beers the night before you ski. It'll fuck you. He's like, no, I ski professional. I'm actually the best skier ever to come through the United States.
Yeah.
Like, I actually know what affects my performance and I'm paying attention, and these beers don't.
Right.
So I'm going to have them and I'm going to ski. And actually, by the way, fuck you, because I don't care if I win or not. I just care if I ski my very fucking best.
Absolutely.
You know, and coaches and everybody, parents and whatever, like, it's not like that. You know, it's not like you go out and, for the most part, and play your best game or run your best campaign or do the best you can, and it doesn't work, which naturally is going to happen all the time. Of course it is. You know, and you still like are enthusiastic about it. Like, yeah, we fucking really, we sent it. Like, we gave it our best. We were on it. You know, like that's true life.
Yes. And it's remarkable that he was able to do that, because that's an incredibly challenging skill, especially someone that was in the public eye and had as many people looking at him as he did. But I'm a big believer, feedback is inherently neutral. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's sterile, it's unbiased, it's just feedback. And it only becomes positive or negative or good or bad when we associate feelings with it. So you have to learn how to depersonalize it, which I'm making it sound incredibly easy. It's not, because we are human beings and we have feelings and emotions. But yeah, that's all that it is. And no matter what that feedback is, can I take whatever it is and find a way to use it to get better? So if it is feedback that most people would consider good, okay, then I need to double down on that. Whatever I did for this performance down the slopes, I need to continue to do that because it worked well for me. I skied one of my best times. Mm-hmm. If I didn't, all right, let me unpack that. Let me go back. What could I have done different? What was in my control that I could have done to ski better next time? And every time you're leveling up. So it really doesn't matter whether you win or lose. It matters whether you're paying attention to the feedback so that the next run down the slopes is better than the previous one. And it sounds like he's got that down pat, where he could say, I can have 3 beers tonight and I will ski the best I've ever skied tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And he knows that. And
I've watched him do it.
I don't doubt it.
Like, I've watched him do it.
But that's incredibly impressive.
It is really impressive. And it's something like, all right, so let's apply this to, my real athletic days are over. I'm still like train and have fun and whatever, but I don't have people watching me play, which I miss, by the way. Yeah. It does suck not having anybody watch you play and anybody give a shit. But
we can shoot some free throws after this. I'll cheer for you.
All right.
I got you.
Let's do it. So one of the things, so let's apply that now. Like, where do you get feedback that you're not willing to look at?
I can apply it to my life right now. Okay. So I'm a professional speaker. So I speak to businesses and at events. And most of those, there's actually a feedback component. The attendees fill out a feedback form and they give it to me. So these people are going to say what they liked, what they didn't like, what they got out of it, what they didn't. And I'm getting much better at being able to take a beat and saying, first of all, this doesn't have anything to do with whether they like me or not. And that's irrelevant. Mm-hmm. I'm there to do a job. I'm there to add value to an audience by sharing with them things that I believe will help them be the best versions of themselves or improve their business. But let me take the feedback that I get from them and let's find what I can use. So if folks say, hey, we like this, you have great energy. Okay, well, if that seems to be a common theme that a lot of people think is valuable to them, then my energy is probably something that I want to continue to maintain at a high level. If there's something else that I'm doing that may be distracting or a portion of content that they don't resonate with, it doesn't mean I throw it out, because that's the other part too about feedback. You might have just had the worst morning of your life. Your grandmother passed away last night. Your dog was sick this morning. You got in a fender bender, and you give me a scathing review as a speaker. That's probably more of a reflection of how your day's going than how I did. So I have to be very careful of that too. But I'm going to look for trends, and I'm going to look for things and say, okay, if a lot of people are saying this might be something to take a look at and maybe make some improvements in the future. But you also have to be careful of where the feedback comes from, because you have to know the difference between opinion and someone's technical skill. Like some guy off the street might not be qualified to tell me how to be a better professional speaker because he doesn't know what it means. He can say whether or not he liked me, that's his opinion, but feedback's a different thing. So I just try to keep my eyes and ears and heart open to it.
Unbiased and your ego uninvolved.
Absolutely.
And that's like, I'm here to learn.
Yes.
I am here to learn, period. And you apply that to whatever the fuck you're doing.
Absolutely.
I'm CEO here to learn. I'm not God-given, granted from the Pharaoh's tit, here to lead Egypt to glory because I'm God too. And all of this crazy idea, like, you're here to learn. You learn and get better. So take the feedback, appreciate the feedback. Yeah. Everybody gets so obsessed, and you hear so many people talking about the haters. Like,
well, who cares?
okay, that's a
Yeah.
type of feedback.
Well,
Like,
absolutely.
and a lot of times that is purely a reflection of them, right?
Yes.
Like I remember 7-8 years ago, I started talking about, probably 8 years ago, really openly talking about ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And the ritualized use of plant medicines
Yep.
for the benefit of spiritual, psychic, mental, physical growth,
Yep.
you know? And I remember when I would start talking about that on social media, everybody would just, not everybody, lots of people would like me, you fucking druggie, go back to the jungle, you fucking druggie, blah, blah, blah.
I mean, it's a pretty polarizing topic.
Right. And then a lot of people were like, wow, that's really interesting and blah, blah, blah. And so the people just calling me a fucking druggie, like, you can't worry about. I didn't go hit them up and start a Twitter war with these people.
You mean you're not going to change someone's mind on social media?
Right. But there was other people who would be like, you know, they would say intelligent things like, yeah, just be mindful of the centers and mindful of the intentions of the shamans, and don't be careful of over promoting, because there's a lot of people looking to take advantage. You take feedback like that, like, oh yeah, you're for sure.
Something to think about.
I'm a little enthusiastic about this. I got to really present both sides. And actually now when I talk about it, I'm as much in the discouraging side
For sure.
as the encouraging side, because there's so much natural encouragement. Like, yeah, fucking be careful and go to the right place and be mindful of all the things. But there's ways, like feedback, that you should ignore. Just recognize that you're triggering things in other people.
Yeah.
These people who have biases and are scared of their own, demons in the shadows or whatever. And the same thing that's happening now in open relationship. When I talk about open relationship, I mean, just get lit up for no reason online. And you can't let that stuff bother you, because again, this is 8 years ago, me talking about ayahuasca. I was a fucking druggie. Right now, I'm a fucking everything,
Right.
And then 8 years from now, all right, we'll see. But you trust your truth, and
Yes.
like, you know what you're talking about, and you listen to people, and you
Yes.
understand and respect and get that, but it doesn't have to bother you.
Right. But I imagine was that a difficult process for you to get to the point where it didn't bother you?
Okay, so about that, it wasn't, right? Because that was like, areas where I'm a little insecure,
Mhm.
those are the areas where I take it hurts.
Of course.
Right? So like one of the things that I'll just use a fairly recent example. One of the things that I was insecure about, and this was like maybe 2-3 years ago, something like that. I have a lot of friends who are comedians, and they're really fucking funny.
Yeah.
They're just like funny like this. And so I'm on all these podcasts with all these comedians, and I was like starting to get insecure that I'm not funny enough to be on these podcasts, right? And so like somebody came up, and I was on a comedian's podcast, and somebody started talking about how not funny I was. And that one, like
That stung.
that one
stung for a little bit?
That one
Yeah.
stung because I agreed.
Yeah.
I agreed
But
with
that's what
what
it
they were
is.
saying,
Yeah.
right? And so it was like, oh yeah, I am not funny enough. But if I didn't have that mentality, and like now I acknowledge, and part of like getting over this is acknowledging where you're insecure,
Yeah.
and acknowledging who you are, and I don't need to be funny
With the
funnier than I
self-awareness.
am. Just self-awareness. Be like, yeah, all right. I'm not as funny as these fucking guys.
Right.
That's okay.
They're professional comedians.
They're comedians.
Yeah.
They're hilarious. That's awesome. I don't need to be that.
I like to follow things up with just so. So
Yeah.
I'm not that funny. So yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of the stuff. I picked up at your weekend in Santa Monica. I'll tell folks, I've been doing the cold showers. Haven't missed a cold shower since Santa Monica.
Amazing.
And I still don't enjoy them by any stretch of the imagination, but I love how they feel when I get out. But I'll tell someone I'm doing that, and they'll say, I can't do that. It's just too cold. It's cold. I'm like, yeah, so it's cold.
Right.
Yeah. If you intermittent fast,
Right.
so you're a little hungry in the morning. So you're a little hungry. Like why does just because you're hungry mean that you have, like, I don't understand. So, and for me, that's been a liberating mindset with some of these things is we have these mental constructs. It's like, oh, well, if I'm hungry, then I absolutely have to eat. Or if that water's a little bit too cold, then I have to make it warmer. I'm not funny. Oh, I'm going to go take an improv class because I have to be funnier. Why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the, if you're going to put any characteristic of like, all right, like what makes Aubrey, and like, I think it is the characteristic of looking at something I'm fucking terrified of and recognizing that, okay, there's benefit actually if I go through this, whether that's a really intense plant medicine ceremony or switching from, a very comfortable monogamy to a very scary open relationship or or whatever, or a really intense sweat lodge, or the cold shower, cold plunge, or whatever.
Making you do an open mic,
Yeah,
comedy
open
club.
mic or whatever. Yeah, I actually am planning to do that.
Oh, awesome! Good
because
for you.
because I am a little scared. Of
I know,
that, right?
but I love that. You go head first.
So just understanding, like it's asking that question, like, so all right, so I'm a little scared. So I know there's value in the transcension of that fear. There always is. If you have fear, that's not like actual danger. I'm not putting my hand in a fucking tank of black scorpions, you know, like that's actual danger. Don't do that. Not smart, you know, but, you know, I need to get over my other fears. And if one of my fears is not being funny, well, then come up with a couple bits and go to an open mic.
Absolutely.
Like for sure have to do that. And I think and because I know there'll be value there. And I know that, you know, even the process of self-judgment and even that process of self-reflection, and even showing up the next, wherever the medicine comes, it's going to come. Yeah. It's going to come at some point from me overcoming that fear. So you almost start to switch the whole way you look at fear. Like, oh, cool. Yes. I have a fear around this thing. Oh, cool.
Gives me something else to tackle.
Gives me something else that's going to be another springboard to an even better version of myself. And I know myself. I know that when I see that, it's going to be like, yeah. And it's actually, it's interesting. And I have all the compassion for people who have a different mentality, but it's funny when people have a sticking point. Yeah. Could be singing, or it could be, you know, speaking in public, or it could be whatever. It's like it's an interesting thing. I'm like, no, I'm too scared of that. And you're like, but you could just do it. Yep. But you could do it, you know, or I'm scared of the cold. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You could do it.
Absolutely.
You know, like you're capable, but it's because everybody's convincing themselves that they don't have that superpower to overcome these things that they know would be beneficial if they overcame.
Absolutely. And I find that fascinating. You know, so Brad in here is an incredible endurance athlete, and I've already seen him do some remarkable stuff. But one of the things a hurdle I'm trying to cross over is I do have some limiting beliefs. I have some initial negative self-talk. He was saying he was considering doing a 100-mile road race, like running on his feet for 100 miles. And the first thought that popped in my mind was like, I can't do that. And then I'm like, that's not a good mindset to have. But see, for me,
you might be right, but it's still
right. But I need to find out. Right, but I need to find out. Yeah. But see, my mindset now is if every day, if I'm doing a little bit of something that I fear, and fear might not be the right word, but a cold shower or the intermittent fasting or doing some of these other things, I'm going to slowly over time, brick by brick, condition myself to be able to beat that mindset. And you are right. I might not be able to run 100 miles, but why would I give up before I've even given it a chance? Sure. And that's what I'm worried about myself, is that's the mindset that I have. So I'm trying to find a way to kind of inch closer to that. So at the very least, when he tells me something crazy he's going to do, my initial reaction is I can't do that. It's going to be, okay, let me consider that, or I'm going to do that too. But I think these little step forwards are a huge help. So
because they apply universally.
Yes.
You know, like people, you got to look at love as a universal and fear as a universal. And any little way that you can increase love increases your love universally, right? Like you love a pet a lot. Yeah. Like that's going to increase how much you love your wife.
Absolutely.
Like it's just because love is universal. The more love you feel, you know, the more love you're going to have.
Absolutely.
And the more fear that you have, the more fear you're going to have universally. The more fear you're going to have that your wife's going to leave you if you're afraid of fucking cold showers, right? Like
absolutely.
Fear and love are universal things. And we got to understand that our goal is to start to tackle and conquer the unnecessary fear. Now, this is not, again, recognition of danger. Everybody tries to call, of course, fear's important, man. Yeah, right. I got it. Understand. Yeah. It's to help us recognize danger.
It's a cold shower. I'm not fighting a rabid Wolverine.
Exactly. It's a cold shower, bro. It's healthy for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, like that's the type of fear that I'm talking about.
There's not sharks in the water. It's a shower. I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, but as you start to tackle and you start to shrink the universal fear and expand the universal love, I mean, I'm feeling the effects of that. Like it's happening, and everything gets a little bit more rosy colored, and the fear has a few less fucking spiders and barbed wire and stings to it because there's just less of it. Yes. There's less of it out there.
And you prime your day. Like, all right, I start my day doing a couple things I don't really want to do, but I did it. And there's going to be a few more things today that I don't want to do, but oh well, throw them on the pile.
Taking a pebble out of the fear pile.
Yes. And putting it on the other side.
Throwing it in the volcano to be emulsified into love.
Absolutely. And create some momentum.
Yeah.
And that's what, I mean, basketball's a game of momentum.
Life is a fucking game of momentum.
Of course it is.
And that's another thing I was talking about recently on these cold showers. Like, we need pattern interrupts. Mm-hmm. You know, so even in basketball, like when a coach calls a timeout, like a well-timed timeout is a pattern interrupt.
Yes.
Like if a team is like starting to like really heat up, better to call the timeout before the fucking place goes
Absolutely.
bananas, and then
Yes.
it makes it even worse, and then everybody's just partying for 2 minutes as the timeout's there, like just getting more excited. Like
Right.
call that timeout a little earlier.
Yep.
Like stop them before the run. Like have your instincts there and have that little pattern interrupt. So
Yes.
before you get back to your whatever situation where you're going to be frothing angry and
Yes.
pissed off and shitty with people, and then have to spend the next fucking week or 7 years of your life apologizing for being a shithead.
Yes.
Well, maybe try the pattern interrupt a little earlier. Call your own timeout. Do your cold shower and your breathing or your
Yes.
hard workout or your sauna first as a little pattern interrupt. And like we need that, teams need that, everybody needs that, because momentum can carry you.
Yes.
The algorithm that is organism can take over, and all of those things can just build, and you'll just blow up if you don't call your own timeout.
Yes.
And find those tools that you can to kind of break that up.
And you'd end the run quickly. The other team's going on a run and you call timeout.
Yeah.
And you just casually bring the team over and say, hey, they're going on a little bit of a heater. We're going to nip this in the bud before. Like but what most coaches do, they wait till it extends. Now you're down 15. You call a timeout and you berate your players for 90 seconds, tell them how awful they are. And then
Yeah.
you send them out with less confidence than they had before.
Yeah.
You did nothing to prepare them to do anything better. You've made it worse. That's awful. But that's how most coaches
meanwhile,
use
the
them.
other team is like, oh yeah, we got him on the ropes now. Look, we
Yeah.
made him call a timeout.
Look how red his face is. Look at him. He's screaming at him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the, those are all patterns that you can learn in sports and then apply to our own life.
Yeah. I tell businesses all the time, like it's important if you have regular set meetings throughout the week. First of all, I think most companies have way too many meetings. I mean, way too many meetings. They're colossal wastes of time. And I always tell them they should view meetings the way basketball coaches view timeouts. First of all, you're given a finite number of them. So you can't have unlimited meetings. Like you get X number of timeouts this game.
Yep.
If you use them all in the first quarter, that's on you. Then you don't have any later. So be strategic about it. Second, let's make sure we have an incredibly detailed plan, because we only have 90 seconds or 30 seconds to execute this. So this is not going to be an open-ended 60-minute all hands on staff meeting. This is going to be only the people that need to be here are going to be here. And we're going to keep this meeting as brief and as purposeful as possible. And then what's so important is you want to make sure everyone leaves the meeting in the emotional state that you want them to return to whatever it is they were going to do. So you don't berate your players before you send them back out on the court. Now they go out there with their tail between their legs. It's worse. Coaches mess that up all the time with their halftime talks. The best time to get on your team and be highly critical is when you're playing really well, because the collective confidence is high. You're going to be rather bulletproof to it. So you just had an amazing first half, Aubrey. You played great. I can get on you about the 2 possessions where you didn't box out, because you're going to be open to that now, as opposed to you just went 0 for 9. You had the worst half ever. You're already, you've already been beaten down, and I'm going to come in there and scream and F-bomb you and make you feel worse? No. Get on your team more with higher scrutiny when they're playing well, and then give them the care and the love when they're not doing well, so you can return them to that state. Same thing in business, but people, they keep getting those things backwards every time.
Yeah.
And it's a shame.
I remember one halftime. This reminds me of this. One halftime, our coach goes in and he tells one of our players who's had a bad first half, he goes, "If I were your fucking family, I would disown you." Right? And he goes on this fucking rampage, right? And like all of us are like, what the fuck? Like
Wow.
that is like ridiculous. Like if I was the school, I would expel you. If I was your family, I would disown you. And I should just kick you off the team right now. And I was like,
That's got to help.
that really helped. Yeah, we went out and killed it that second half. Our spirits were really high. We didn't have any fear in our system. We were playing out of love there.
I mean,
good job. That
There's
was
so
really
many
good.
other ways you can approach that.
Yeah.
And again, it's all to the level of trust and care you've built. So again, and it's also about knowing your team. So if I know your personality and I can say something, hey, Aubrey, yeah, great first half, man. You got 1 more rebound than me, and I'm wearing a suit and tie. Like, you think you can get a few more rebounds this next half? Come on, man. I know you got it in you.
Yeah.
You were a dog in practice yesterday. I know you got this. Imagine that versus I'm going to disown you. Like, it's night and day on how you're going to get someone to respond.
And it changes the patterns. Like parents who over punish their kids. You know what they do is they create a bunch of fucking liars.
Yeah.
You know, like you create a bunch of
Absolutely.
fucking corner cutting, you know, appearance giving, lying motherfucking kids.
Yes.
Good job. Now you've broken the trust bond because
Yes.
they're not going to tell you shit.
No.
They're going to be sneaking out every chance they get.
Yes.
They're not going to talk to you about, hey, should I do these drugs or not do these drugs?
Right.
Because if you talk about drugs, you're grounded for the fucking rest of your life anyway. So
Yep.
you've just created a really antithetical situation. You think you're being a good parent. You're going to pat yourself on the back.
Nope.
You're being an asshole.
Yeah.
You know, like, because your kids now can't trust you for guidance in life. So who are they going to go to? I don't know. They're other homies.
Yes.
You know, who don't know shit anyways either.
And so I'm going to praise you when you get an A, but I'm going to berate you when you get a C or a D. I'm not going to ask any questions about whether or not so what, now you're going to cheat because I'm going to copy off this kid's paper so I can get an A. So my dad's not going to come down on me.
Figuring out whatever way to create the positive outcome because
that's all that I've shown that matters is the outcome.
You've put so much fear into the fucking system, you know, like, and it's just building that mountain, and then that mountain is going to play out into their family life, into their professional life, into their whole thing. They're going to have these patterns of mistrust and lying, and it's going to project eternally.
Yeah.
You know, and like there's very simple principles. But meanwhile, what we're talking about in school is remembering the date that some fucking Treaty of Versailles was signed or some shit. Like that matters. Like I can't Google that shit anytime I want to fucking figure it out. You know how long it takes me? I don't know. As long as it takes me to fucking type it in my phone.
Yes.
I got this shit.
And
I don't even know when the date is.
And I'm 43, and you know how many times someone has asked me that since I graduated?
Yeah, zero. But how about like communication and love and fear and like not having shame, not being ashamed to look at your mistakes because you're not going to punish yourself because you haven't internalized this world self-critical conditional love bullshit so that you can actually look at when you screw up and be like, oh yeah, I screwed up. Cool. I'll be better next time because I'm here to learn.
Yes.
And that's the only thing I'm responsible for is doing my best in learning.
That's all that matters. But same thing, if you're my son and you come home and you have an A, a few B's and C's, and then an F, most parents are going to be focused on the F and going to say, okay, now we need to get tutors. You're grounded. We're going to do something to get this. Why pay attention to that? Why don't we look at the A that you got? Let me see what subject you got an A because one, you probably like it. Two, you probably have a natural talent for it. So why don't I find something to double down and improve the thing that you're already showing something that you're good at instead of focusing on, you know, for me as a parent, as long as it's not out of disrespect, as long as my kids are respectful and they do what they're supposed to do, I'm not too worried about the grades portion. That stuff will all it'll all just figure itself out if they do what they're supposed to do. And if they have this mindset where they're open to learn, the learning is way more important than whether you can regurgitate it on a test. That part is irrelevant, but that's the outcome. So like just know you have to learn.
When we ask like, how'd you do? You know, we're really looking, no, did you win? Did you lose?
Yes.
Really the two questions we should ask any athlete or, you know, or
I want to
anybody
hear these,
is
I've got
like,
4.
You have 4?
Yes, that I ask my kids all the time, but I want to hear what yours are.
Well, I think really the two things are, did you do your best?
That was one of them.
And did you learn?
I love it.
And like should also probably, did you enjoy yourself? You know, like
okay. Well, then you've got my list. So I've got 8-year-old twin sons and a 6-year-old daughter. My 4 rules are: 1, make sure you listen to your coaches. 2, make sure you're a good teammate, which at their age, it's kind of like, hey, make somebody else smile, give somebody a high five. 3, did you have fun? And 4, did you give your best effort? As long as you do those 4 things, I'll keep paying for it. I'll keep Ubering you there. I'll keep doing everything I can to support you. If you're not going to do those 4 things, then there's no point in doing this. Yeah. But the funny thing is, if you do those 4 things, if you're coachable, if you serve your teammates, if you have fun and you do the best you can, you'll end up being the best player you can be. Like that's the recipe.
Well,
but
you're teaching yourself life.
Yes.
Using sports as the metaphor to teach you about life. Do your best, learn always.
Yes.
And just have fun.
Enjoy
because
the
if
process.
That's the only thing that you're worried about is doing your best and learning, why wouldn't you have fun? Because these sports are designed to be awesome. They weren't designed for all this crazy pressure and perform. They were designed because people were bored and they were like, this would be awesome. Let's put up a peach basket and try to make it in there. And then we'll have to go get it out of the basket, you know, eventually. But you know, it'll still be fucking fun in the meantime.
Absolutely.
And how many games have we invented like that? Find a little, we used to throw, my brother was a football player. We used to throw his little cleats in this wooden chalice that somehow made its way to my family. Maybe it was lathed from his wood class. And we'd spend like 30 minutes throwing cleats across the room into this little chalice. And that was our fucking cleats in the hole. Cleats in the hole was like our family game.
Cleats in the hole.
But imagine if we made cleats in the hole a performance thing where like our dad was like yelling at us like, yeah, how dare you miss that cleat in the hole?
Wow.
Like it would just ruin the whole thing. When all sports were like that, they're fun. So you should have fun. Just do your best and learn.
Should be the point.
Yeah.
Wow.
My mom was nasty at cleats in the hole, by
was
the way. She was just nasty at cleats. She could just rip them.
Wow.
Just rip them from deep.
I love it.
She can also catch a cork. I don't know. I posted this a couple times.
Yes, I've seen that.
She can catch a cork.
I saw that.
I can't get anybody to reproduce that. Myself, like, it works every time.
She's like an outfielder. Like the eye-hand coordination. I saw you put that on G. That was amazing.
Left hand, she just grabbed a full extension left hand cork grab.
That thing comes out like a bullet.
It does.
Yeah.
She's gangster.
That's pretty dope, man.
Man, it's great to have you, brother.
Yes, thank you so much.
Raise Your Game.
Came out yesterday.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
Well, it won't be yesterday when the podcast comes out.
It came out 3.5 weeks ago. Let's hold that up. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
I appreciate it.
And follow you on all the social. What's your social handle?
At Alan Stein Jr.
Beautiful.
Easy to find.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure to have you out in Santa Monica, too. And look forward to continuing the relationship, man. And let's try to get in the hardwood here soon.
Appreciate it. That'd be great.
Yep.
Thanks.
See you, everybody. Peace.